Hello, this is Greg from SharePoint Maven, and in this video I would like to talk about one of the hottest and misunderstood topics of SharePoint. I'm of course talking about SharePoint permissions. So what I would like to do in this tutorial, I will obviously explain to you how SharePoint permissions work, but in this video specifically, I'm actually going to share more of tips and best practices on how to manage permissions in SharePoint. One other thing I want to mention is that SharePoint security and permissions model, it's such a broad topic, all right? There's just so much. It is, I will admit it's a bit complicated to understand, especially if you're new to SharePoint. But I will try to summarize. I will try to provide you tips and tricks from various angles, from both end user perspective as well as SharePoint admin perspective. In addition, I also wanted to highlight the fact that I actually have a pretty detailed article on my blog where I actually explain the same permissions, tricks and best practices that I'm about to show you in this tutorial. So if you go to my blog, you can actually find it in there. I will also make sure to include the URL to this article from the description of the video. So definitely check it out. And the reason why you want to do that is because on this blog, I actually provide obviously the high-level overview of the best practice, but I also have some in-depth links to some of more in-depth, topics. If you do want to learn more about that particular feature or that particular, tip and trick, best practice, definitely, follow the links from this article to the other articles that I have on my blog, and they will provide a lot more in-depth information to you in terms of how this particular feature works. And once again, you can obviously find this article on my blog, but it will also be available in the description of this video as well. All right, so let's start with, I guess, best practice number one, recommendation number one, about SharePoint permissions. Make sure to manage permissions at the site level. All right. The best practice in SharePoint is to manage permissions at the site level, and this is actually, I guess, a big issue and a big eye opener, I guess, for many users who and I guess IT providers who are migrating, their clients from, file shares to SharePoint, all right? Because in the file share, right, you probably have a few network drives and there's a bunch of folders and subfolders, and all of these folders, top level folders, whatever subfolders, probably have lots of unique permissions. And while we can obviously organize things in folders and subfolders on SharePoint, the best practice is to manage security at the site level. So you see, in SharePoint, we think in terms of sites, not not folders, even though we do care about folders. So let me give you kind of a use case. Let me give you an example. Say you are migrating from Dropbox or Google Drive or file shares, network drive to SharePoint Online, and you probably have a series of folders, and you would have a folder for accounting and HR and marketing and legal. Well, guess what? All of these top-level folders translate into different sites in SharePoint. The more sites, the better. That's the philosophy, all right, in SharePoint. So even though you might be a small business, even though you might not have enough content, you still want to create many different sites. And let me explain to you just a few reasons, and explain why this is important. Why is it important to create all these different sites? Well, first of all, it's so easy to manage permissions at the site level. All right, here we go. I can easily see who has access to this HR team site. And pretend, let's now pretend, imagine if you have all of these folders and subfolders in one big site, one big document library. You have no idea who has access to what, right? There is no easy way to see who has access to whatever folder we have in SharePoint. So once you create all the sites, you manage security at the site level, and it's just so much simpler. All right. There are many other reasons. Once again, you can check out my blog, I guess, and find the other reasons. Another reason, just to give you an example, is that with the site you get so much more, right? You get not just a place to store documents, you get other web parts. You can build site, you can build pages, you can build lists. There is so much more you can do than just store documents. So just to finish off on this particular recommendation, again, if you have all these different top-level folders, maybe with unique permissions, accounting has their own security and set of documents, HR and marketing have their own. Those would be different sites, and in some cases, you might even end up with multiple, sites per given department. Let me give you a use case for that. Let's take human resources, HR. All right. HR might have a private, restricted team site, just like the one I'm showing you right now on the screen, right? This is a private restricted site for HR, only accessible by the HR team. And at the same time, you might have content that is meant for employees, right? Let's say you have some employee handbooks and HR policies and some news and announcements. Whatever is on the site is only available to the HR team. So in this case, you might also have an employee-facing site, a communication type of site, right? And this is the site that HR will have added access to, and everyone else will be read-only, a visitor, right? And essentially, this separate site has its own unique permissions. It's independent of that other private HR site. And once again, why? Because it's so much easier to manage permissions here, right? This is the only foolproof way to be rest assured that no one else has access, to that private HR content, right? We have a separate site, and that other site is only accessible by the HR team, and this one, first of all, I can easily see who has access, and second, I can easily say, oh, everyone within our organization will have visitor access, all right, read-only access, all right. So once again, this is yet another reason why you do want to proceed with several sites, many sites, and this is why we do need to manage security at the site level, not at the file level, not at the folder level, at site level. If you have unique content, just create another site. All right. Now, obviously, there is exception to everything. I mean, look, if you have, let's say, a site and maybe there is one little file or one little folder you need to hide, you can obviously create unique permissions for those. But if you have a bunch of folders, right, a number of files, and you need to create unique permissions for them, just create another site. The next two recommendations, the next two SharePoint permissions best practices, they kind of are related. They go hand in hand. Essentially, the recommendation here is that you need to manage permissions for a communication site through SharePoint security groups, and you need to manage permissions for the team site through a Microsoft 365 group membership. So let me, first maybe create a few sites, and then I'll show you. I'll explain to you what those two, recommendations are all about. Let's go ahead and create a few new sites. So I'm going to navigate to the SharePoint start page, just like that, and I'm going to create a new site. Now, in SharePoint, we have two main types of sites, two main, templates to choose from. We have what's called a communication site and a team site. And just to show you what is a communication site, what you see right now on the screen is a communication site. All right, it's a type of site that you would use for one-way information sharing. All right, it's a type of site that you would use maybe for HR employee, facing site. I mean, my intranet home site, right? This one right here is a communication site. But when you create a communication site, you get this nice looking, visually appealing type of site, no left-hand side navigation. Essentially, this is the type of site that you would use for one-way information sharing. All right, and that's essentially a communication site. A team site, so for everything else, you would create a team site. What is a team site? You just saw an example right here. So a team site is a site that is used for two-way collaboration. And first of all, let me highlight the differences. So first of all, on the team site, we have left-hand side navigation. And also, this is the type of site that is connected behind the scenes to something called a Microsoft 365 group. So behind the scenes, it is connected to this group, which is essentially a security group, all right, a membership group. But also behind the scenes, when I created this team site, a few other elements got created. All right. So first of all, you can connect a Microsoft team to it, just like this. All right. But let me show you a few other things that also got created when I created this team site. A group calendar was created in Outlook. You see, here is the one in blue is my personal calendar. The one in green is my group, calendar for that same site. Let me show you what else was created. The plan and planner. All right. As you can see, same people who have access to the site have access to this plan and planner. All right. And just like I said, we also have a Microsoft team attached to it. You see, essentially, this is the same team that you saw previously, but now this is the team connected to that SharePoint site, to that Microsoft 365 group. So it's super important to understand is that when you create a team site, all right, with communication site, you just get a communication site, nothing else. With a team site, you get so much more. Whether you use those applications or not, that's your decision. I'm just letting you know that you have them. And the idea here is that, all right, I mean, if let's say we have a project, we have some team, we have some project client. By creating a team site, you have all the different applications to manage that project, right? You have a site to store documents. You get a team, to chat with your colleagues. You get a calendar to manage, group events, and you get planner to manage, tasks for that project. This was just kind of a brief overview of what a team site is. Let me now go back to that SharePoint start page. So this, essentially are the two types of sites that we have. There are actually, a few more that we can create, but they're only available to the SharePoint admins. But these are the two main ones. So let's go ahead and create a communication site. And I'm just going to create a basic site. Today's focus is not so much about design, but more of permissions. So I'm going to do that. And you know what? I'm just going to give it a name, some communication site, all right? Could be some department site, whatever, all right? So I'm going to create that. And the reason I'm creating those sites, first of all, I want to walk you through the process. But second, we are going to use those sites I will utilize those sites to demonstrate how security works, how to manage permissions for the sites. And then I'm going to repeat this step for the team site. So let's create a team site now. Just like that, it even tells you over here that it's connected to Microsoft 365 various products, all right? So let's do that. Again, I'll just create a simple type of site, and this will be, I'm not very creative here, some team site, just like that, all right? And look, remember when I created the communication site, all right, obviously it went through the background check and made sure that the URL was available, and in our case it is here as well. But look, remember how I said that a bunch of other things are getting created? When I create a site, right, a calendar and planner and teams and all that, Another thing that's getting created is this email distribution list for that same team. So it does go and check for the availability of this alias, I guess, which it is. So I'm going to click next, create a site. Let's not worry about members here. I'll demonstrate it to you in a second. So here we go. I just created, this is what a team site looks like. And if you notice, so first of all, unlike a communication site, it does have left-hand side navigation. But most importantly, in the upper right-hand corner, it says it's a group. You see, it's a group. It's this Microsoft 365 group. And look at this. It even, remember how I said you can connect a team to it? It didn't offer this to us on the communication side. On the team side, it does offer us to connect it to Microsoft Teams, which I'm not going to do, but you can do that. And yeah, this is the membership. This is the Microsoft 365 group membership. I'm the only member there at the moment. So now that we created this two types of sites, let me now demonstrate these two best practices I wanted to demonstrate. All right. So best practice number two in terms of SharePoint permissions. If you have a communication site, make sure to utilize the three SharePoint security groups that we have. Let me explain to you what I'm talking about. So once again, we have our communication site. The security on communication side is managed through the SharePoint security groups. It's actually different on the team side, which I will show you in a second. So to manage security on communication side, you can either click gear icon site permissions, or you can just click site access. And you're going to see three SharePoint security groups: site visitors, site members, site owners. Visitors are read-only people. They can only read and download, nothing else. Members are add, edit, delete people. So these are the users who can add, edit, delete content, but they cannot delete a site. And site owners, these are the people who essentially can delete a site if they want to, all right? The admins. So here's a use case. I'm going to go and add Mary as the member. And I want to add everyone within our organization as a visitor. So I'm going to click here, type in Mary, and I'm going, you see three permission levels, and I'm going to give Mary edit access. And what happens, it actually puts Mary into the members group. So Mary now can help me with the content. She can add, edit, delete anything on the site. And I want everyone to be a visitor. Now, you can also type in the names, but if you, let's say, we're building some HR department site and I want literally everyone within my organization to have read-only access, just type in everyone. Everyone except external users is a default group that exists, all right? It's not a group I created or maybe UIT created. It's a group that Microsoft created for all of us. Every single SharePoint tenant has one. And it automatically captures everyone within your organization. So it's a quick way for you to add everyone, to your site with one click, essentially. All right. And as people come and go, the beauty about this group is, as people come and go, their accounts are reflected in this group. So if, let's say, your organization hires somebody new tomorrow, they will be added as part of this group. To this particular group once IT creates essentially an account for them, a Microsoft 365 account for them. All right. So just like that, and yeah, it doesn't send an email anyway. You don't even need to worry about this checkbox, but let's uncheck and let's see what just happened. Look at this. We now set the proper permissions. Look how easy it was, right? Remember what I mentioned earlier, try to manage security at the site level. All right, do not, start creating unique permissions for different pages and, different folders and libraries and files. All right. Otherwise, it's too granular. You probably have a full-time job. You don't want to be managing permissions full-time. So stay at the site level. Also, kind of related to this, let me show you what I see all the time. Unfortunately, people do. All right. So if you click site access, it's actually pretty straightforward here, right? You can also access all of this by clicking gear icon, site permissions. And you do see the same, three groups, and you can invite people from here as well. But here, as the site owner, you do see a few more options. And one of these options is this advanced permission settings. And unfortunately, I see this all the time. Users just click on this advanced permission settings and they go behind the scenes. And this is what the classic SharePoint looks like and looked like for many years. And they start creating all these different groups in here. They start creating all these custom permission levels. Um, you know, this is the old model. All right, this is a classic model. Don't do that. Do not go beyond that, site gear icon, site permissions screen. Do not click on advanced permissions. You don't need them. All right. Yes, you can create custom permission levels. For example, add, edit, but no delete. But this is not really the best practice. All right. This are all the, look how confusing it is. These are all these different permission levels we used to have with classic SharePoint, and we could create our own. It was super confusing. Now we just have full control for the owners, edit for the members, and read for the visitors. So long story short, I'm not even going to explain to you anything on that page, all right, on that classic page, because you shouldn't even be there. If you want to manage permissions, click gear icon, site permissions, add your people here, and leave. All right, do not click here, please. So I just showed you how to manage permissions on communication sites, and just to summarize it, make sure to utilize the three and only three, SharePoint security groups: visitors, members, and owners. Let's talk about permissions on the team side, and that's where the recommendation number three, best practice number three, comes in. If you have a team site, make sure to manage permissions through the group membership. Because remember, access to this site is managed through the group membership. Remember, this Microsoft 365 group manages access not just to the site, but also to other elements that our team might utilize. So unfortunately, right, let me show you what a lot of people do when they try to add somebody to the site. They click gear icon, site permissions. They do the same thing I just showed you on communication side. And guess what? They actually see this, and it's kind of confusing here. Like, what is this? What this is, just to let you know, this is the same because the site, right, the SharePoint site, it always had all of its own SharePoint security groups. And just like a communication site, it still has visitors, members, and owners, security groups. SharePoint security groups. But because we also have a Microsoft 365 group kind of attached to the site now, this is it right here. So anyone who you add as a member of the of your team site, I guess, if you add as a member, they're here, and owners are here. So remember, I'm the only user, and I'm the owner. I am in this group. I am in this owner group. And this owner group is within the SharePoint security group. Hopefully that makes sense. So let me show you. We'll actually come back to this because I want to show you a nice little trick as well. But here's the use case. I want to invite Mary to my site, but you know what? Mary is my colleague, and I want Mary to obviously have access to everything that I have access to, right? I want her to access the site, but also let's say we have Microsoft Team behind the scenes and maybe a planner where we manage tasks. I want Mary to obviously collaborate with me on the project, so Mary needs to have access to everything. So here's the correct way to add a user to your team site. Utilize the Microsoft 365 group membership. You click on the members here, you say add members, and you type in, let's add Mary this time. Just like that. Now, remember, when we manage permissions for the communication side, we had three choices, right? Visitor, member, and owner. Here, you only get two. It's kind of all or nothing, all right? You are either part of the team or you're not. All right, so if you're the member of the team, you have edit, delete access to the SharePoint site, to a Microsoft team, to a group calendar, to plan and planner. And if you become the owner, if Mary, I want to, the difference between owners and members is essentially that owners can obviously tweak some advanced settings, on the site, and owners can also invite, or disinvite, like remove members, right? Regular members cannot do that. But for now, let's stick with Mary being the member. Click Save. And look at this. It now says two members. Mary is the member and I am the owner. So now both of us have access to the site, planner, Teams, group calendar, and so on. And let me show you, let me go back here, gear icon site permissions. I think this will become a little bit more obvious now. Mary, remember I added Mary as a member. She isn't here. She is part of Microsoft 365 group, but she is a member, and she got added to this site members, which is a SharePoint group. I know it's a bit confusing. And I'm here. I'm the owner, remember? So I'm here. So as you add, other, users, other members, to your, to the membership, members will be here, owners will be here. Because if you're the owner of the, Microsoft 365 group, you obviously are the owner of the site. But now let me tell you the only reason, all right, the only reason why you would be going to this gear icon site permissions. Remember, I told you for team sites, because they're managed by the Microsoft 365 group, you always want to add people in here. Let me give you one valid exception. So here's a use case. Let's say I want to now add John, and John works in some other department. And I want John to have access to the site, maybe read-only access to the site. And in addition to that, I don't want John to have access to anything else. Okay, John should not have access to Teams, group calendar, or planner. Obviously, I cannot add John here, right? The minute I add John here, all right, he will be just like Mary, and he will have add delete access to everything. Instead, I just want John to have read-only access to the site. All right, we don't even have read-only access here, remember? So how do we resolve that? Well, here's the trick. Gear icon, site permissions. And once again, we see these three groups. We want John to be in here, in the visitors, SharePoint security group. So what we're going to do, we're going to bypass the Microsoft 365 group membership, and we're going to add John directly to the site. This is what you will need to do. Click Add Members. And look, now you see two options: add members to the group or share site only. So we obviously don't want to do this, right? We want to share site only. We're bypassing the Microsoft 365 group membership. So I'm going to do that. And it even tells you in fine print here that, hey, this site is part of the group. If you add users here, they will only have access to the site, but not to the other group stuff, all right? So that's exactly what we want. And I'm going to add John. And because I'm adding John directly to the site, it's the same experience that we had on communication side, right? We have 3 permission levels. And in my case, I want to add, John as a visitor, read, click add. And let me show you what just happened. So John is still not going to be here, right? I did not add John as the member of the team. But if I click here, gear icon, site permissions, exactly what I wanted. All right. So Mary as the member, she's in here, I'm here, and John as a read-only user is in the visitors group. All right. So this is the only kind of scenario, I guess, where why you might want to be in here. So if you need to bypass the group membership and maybe add people to the site so they have access to the documents and other content you have on your site. All right. And by the way, same thing. All right. Same rule applies. Advanced permission settings, you shouldn't even be there. All right. Don't click. Don't go beyond the screen. You don't need to. All right, so let me now share another tip with you. Best practice number 4. make sure to properly manage site sharing settings. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. So I'm back on communication side. All right. So this is the side that, once again, you use for one-way information sharing. This is the site that is just an independent site. It's not connected. It's not part of Teams or Microsoft 365 groups. So let me double check. Let's just double check who has access to this site at the moment. Well, everyone is read-only. Mary is the editor, and I'm the owner of the site. Let me show you how SharePoint security, how SharePoint permissions work out of the box. So in this particular browser, I'm logged in as Mary. All right. So remember, Mary is the member of this site. Let me show you what Mary can do. All right. Being the member of the site. So she can click on site access and she can type in John and she can click share. Let me show you what just happened. If we click on site access again, look at this. John was added into the members group by Mary. All right. So remember, I'm the owner. Let me go back to to the browser where I'm logged in. So I'm logged in here. And again, I'm the owner of the site, but look at this. So without my permission, Mary was able to essentially invite John just by being the member of the site. And this is how by default how SharePoint permissions work. It's kind of a wild west. All right, anyone can invite anyone they wish. All right, internally or externally, and they don't need my permission. That's just how it is. Now, even though this is how it works by default, you can tweak those settings. But this is an extra step you need to do, and that's essentially what I'm going to show you right now. So if you want, sometimes, right, let's say if it's a team site, you don't care, right? You probably want people to easily share, you trust them. But again, let's say we're building an HR employee facing site, and you really don't want any members to invite other non-department people maybe to the site, right? So you want to prevent that sharing capability. So here's how you need to do that. Obviously, you need to be the owner to tweak those settings. Gear icon, site permissions. And of course, this is where you add people, right? This is where you see those groups and all. And under site sharing, you see change how members can share. And essentially, this is where you specify you can downgrade this, all right, if you wish. So by default, like I said, it's Wild West. It says site owners and members can share files, folders, and the site. Site, you can downgrade. There are two more options that are available. So if you downgrade to this one, to this middle option, we can still, site owners and members can still share files and folders, but only site owners can share the site. So if I want Mary to maybe share a folder from here with somebody outside of the team, she can still do that, but not the entire site. And if you totally want to lock it down, essentially you choose this bottom radio button. Only site owners can share files, folders on the site. So essentially, if I choose this option, Mary will not be able to share the whole site or even individual files and folders. So you would need to choose one of these options. Now, what's actually going to happen, it's not like when you right click on a folder, the share button will disappear. Likewise, it's not like this functionality will disappear for Mary. Mary will still be able to click share button and type in the individual's names. But it's not going to add them right away. What's actually going to happen, as the owner of the site, I'm going to receive an email asking me to approve or reject. All right. So again, it doesn't get rid of the share buttons or share links. The users will still get to see them, but there will be this intermediate step where, as the owner of the site, I will get an email and I will either approve or reject. And if I approve, they will be added, to the members group. And if I reject, they will not. All right. But super, super important. A lot of organizations kind of miss this. And if you don't configure this, then you're going to end up with a situation when even though you set up your permissions, correctly and maybe added one or two people, don't be surprised that, when you see 25 people in here, because what that means is that your members just click the share button. So for this next tip, we actually have to go to the SharePoint Admin Center, because what I want to talk about right now is external sharing. So my recommendation, too often I see my clients just totally disable external sharing altogether, and I definitely don't recommend that you do that, because the users will always find workarounds, right? They will utilize their, Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, or some other means, or they will just send an email externally. So I do always recommend that you leave external sharing enabled. With that being said, the recommendation I want to give to you in terms of best practices, you can manage permissions for external sharing on a side-by-side basis. So let me show you how that works. Once again, I'm going to navigate to the SharePoint Admin Center. So the external sharing, the capability to share externally, is controlled within the SharePoint Admin Center, and obviously this is the area that is only accessible by your SharePoint admins, those with SharePoint admin role. And actually, let me show you before we go to the site. Let me first show you how this whole external sharing works. If under policies you click on sharing, what you control here is whether or not you allow external sharing within the organization. All right, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden the users have access to everything if you leave it on, all right, externally. It means that essentially you do allow external sharing within the organization. So this is what you see right now on the screen is actually a default setting, and I always recommend that you leave it as is. With that being said, you can control it on a side-by-side basis. Let me actually find those few sites that we created, today. I think they should be appearing over here. Yeah, these two right here. So we have a communication side and a team side. And now you can control external sharing on a side-by-side basis. And let me tell you how it works by default, and you can actually tweak it. So all the communication sites have external sharing disabled by default, and all the team sites have external sharing enabled by default. And I think the thinking here is that let's say it's a communication site, most likely it's an internal employee-facing site. So Microsoft decided by default to disable external sharing here. With that being said, you can control it on a side-by-side basis. So let's say for some reason, maybe this is an onboarding site you create and for new employees, right? And maybe they are still considered external users. You want to enable external sharing, not a problem. Checkbox, sharing. And remember what I said, by default it's off, but you can say, you know what, we are going to allow external sharing for this particular site. All right, just like that. All right, nice and easy. And then, likewise, team site, let's check external sharing here. Like I said, it's on by default. But let's just say, what, this happens to be a super private, restricted, executive site. We should not have any external sharing at all on this site. So yeah, by default it's on. You can actually downgrade it and disable external sharing. So the bottom line is, the recommendation here is do not disable external sharing altogether. I think it's trouble waiting to happen. But if you are worried about maybe some content being shared externally, you can always control it on a side-by-side basis, just like I showed you. The next recommendation, the next security and permissions best practice, number 6 that I want to share with you, has to do with sharing of documents, files and folders. Let me explain to you what I'm talking about. So, typically, what happens is you have a site, and most likely, if it's going to be, it might be a team site, not a communication site, but we might as well stay just here. So let me show you what happens all the time, unfortunately. All right. So users, typically generate this links or they share these documents, and of course they, invite, various users, and click the send button and essentially invite them to specific files and folders and share all these documents within or out, inside or outside of the team. So that's great. But what happens now, and you can now see this little indicator over here on the right-hand side, you see this little icon. As you share all of these files and folders, you will get to see lots of those icons. That means that this folder has been shared. So that means that quite possibly, right, depending on the type of link you generated, other people have access to this file or folder who are not even part of the team. So what you might want to do, and that's the recommendation, and this unfortunately is not something that's happening frequently, is if you invited users, make sure to remove them, as well. Because until you do that, that's something manual that will need to occur, right? They're not going to automatically disappear from this folder. So if you invited them 3 months ago, they're still going to have access to this folder. So how do you remove those shared links? So here is what you would need to do to remove those shared links, to remove those users from files and folders. So right click on the folder that you shared previously, manage access. And let me explain to you what you are going to see here. So we'll start in the middle. This under groups, it shows you who has access to this folder, right? And essentially, it shows me that these are the SharePoint security groups that we have, right? Owners, members, and visitors. All right, so that's awesome. Essentially, these are the people who have access to the site. But now I also have those people tabs and links tab. All right, and let me show you what we have here. So remember, I invited Mary. All right, I generated a link for her. All right, here she is. I gave her edit access. Well, we don't want maybe Mary to have access to this document. All right, I no longer want the link to work, for example. In this case, I can remove just like that. All right. Likewise, if I click on links, let's see what we have here. Oh, look at this. It shows me that somebody at some point invited some external user to that particular folder and generated a link. Well, I no longer want this external user to have access, to this folder. You can either remove the user, all right, maybe because there were multiple people who were invited, all right, maybe you remove a particular user, or you can actually delete the whole link altogether. And when you do that, essentially, yeah, the link just stopped working. So if the user logs in, that external user goes to their email and tries to click on the link and have access to that folder, they will get essentially access denied. So that's essentially what the recommendation is all about. Make sure to manage, to right-click, manage access, and clean up those shared links, for better security. The next SharePoint permissions tip I want to share with you has to do with the security settings for the site again. And the recommendation here is that make sure to give the minimum access that the user needs. Let me explain to you what I'm talking about. So too often I go when I work on client sites, the internet portals or any other types of sites, as I maybe do audits and so on. Here's what I get to see. All right. Sometimes I see like 5 or 10 people being the owners, and you know what else I see? Uh, Even though the objective here is a communication site, and instead of 2 or 3 people with added permissions, the whole organization with 300 people have added permission. All right. So make sure the recommendation here is make sure to only give the minimum access that the user needs. All right. For example, 1 or 2 owners at most. All right. You should not have like 10 people appearing as the owners, because let me tell you why. Because if you're the owner of the site, here's what you can do. all right? You can actually delete the whole site, all right, by accident or on purpose. That's a different story. But um, if you want to minimize this, let's say John and Mary, they are only, they're team members, right? They're part of our department. They should only be able to edit content. Well, make sure to give them the minimum permission that they need. All right. Likewise, if it's depending on the type of site, this might or might not be a valid scenario. But usually when I see everyone within the organization being able to edit the site, that's usually wrong. All right, unless maybe some global, company-wide site. So again, most likely this is how it should be. All right. So make sure to essentially provide the minimum permission that the user needs to the site. The next recommendation I want to make, number 8, also has to do with minimum, permissions possible, but it's related to sharing of files and folders. So let me explain to you what I mean by that. So let's say I want to share this budget document with maybe somebody outside of my team, right? So you right click, copy link or share, doesn't matter. Let's just say share, and I invite once again, let's invite Mary, all right? Just like that. Now, most users just go ahead and click send button, right? But first let's ask ourselves a question: what kind of permission I want to provide Mary with? Well, look, I want Mary just to take a look at this budget document, and that's it. I don't want Mary to make any changes. Well, guess what? By default, unfortunately, again, it gives kind of the maximum, permission level possible. So you see, by default, Mary gets the edit access. So if I leave it as is, essentially Mary will be able to edit the document. Well, I don't want that. So I'm going to downgrade it. All right, I can say can view. So the link that Mary will receive, when she clicks on the link, she will only get view only, option. She's not going to be able to modify this document. All right, so that's tip number 1. The other thing related to this is, and again, it's kind of hidden, but make sure to do that. By default, when you share a file or folder, it generates a link that will work for everyone within your organization. That's actually what it's called, people in your organization type of link. Let me prove it to you. If I click gear icon here, you can generate different link types. And by default, it generates people in your organization type of link. So even though this budget document was intended for Mary, the link will work for everyone. So if Mary decides to forward that email to her friends in another department, they click on the same link because the link will work for anyone within our organization. They will be able to access this budget document. Once again, I don't want this. All right. So if I only want Mary to be able to see, this document and no one else, what you need to do is downgrade it from this one to this one, people you choose. And essentially the way it works is that because I invite Mary, this link that I generate will only work for Mary, no one else. All right, so, and that's exactly what I want. All right, and once again, we can tweak those edit and view settings, click apply. So yeah, I just tweaked the link, but this type of link, that email that Mary will receive, will only work for her. All right, if she decides to forward that email to the entire company, nobody, when they click on the link, they will get access denied. And that's exactly what I wanted. So long story short, the recommendation here with this particular tip or best practice is that when you share your files and folders, just like with inviting somebody to the site, make sure to give them the minimum permissions possible. All right, don't go for the default. Make sure to give them the minimum permissions possible. By the way, within the admin center, it is possible your SharePoint admins can actually specify the default type of link. So if you want by default to have another option here, right? Not this generic one, the company wide, but maybe people you choose option and can view. So you want it to be a default. Your SharePoint admin can tweak those settings behind the scenes in the SharePoint Admin Center. Recommendation number 9 I want to give, and this is a common question with many of my clients who are migrating, especially from file shares to SharePoint Online, but you really need to make a decision about the Active Directory, security groups or Microsoft 365 security groups. You see, essentially in file shares, of course, and network drives, your IT probably managed, security through the Active Directory groups, right? So they would, create all these security groups within the Active Directory for different, departments, teams, projects, and then they would tweak the security of each and every folder through those groups. Well, in SharePoint, right, like I said in the beginning, we think in terms of sites, not folders. So all the top level folders that you used to have, they're now sites. And not only that, but majority of those sites are team sites. And those team sites, remember, they are connected. The security for those is managed through Microsoft 365 Group. And in the past, right, the security used to be managed, mostly by IT. With team sites, it's power to the people. All right, with team sites, essentially a business user owns the membership of their own team. And I think this is right. I mean, I actually agree with this notion, right? I actually agree with this philosophy. If I am, let's say I'm a member of this is my HR team site. I am the head of the department. I want to be in charge, right? I don't want to call IT every single day asking them to add or remove users. I'm going to do it myself. I own the content and I own security for my site. So bottom line is, what I see happening is that when you are shifting from a file share to SharePoint Online, you really need to change your mentality and start thinking about sites and the concept of Microsoft 365 groups. All right, and essentially, the idea now that going forward is that your users will be responsible for security. It's kind of a decentralized approach, but it does make sense. But it does allow essentially the individual business users to manage their own security, for the sites that they have. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will not be utilizing those existing security groups, right? For example, let's say you have a bunch of AD groups, and let's say you have hundreds, thousands of users within your organization. You might still benefit from AD groups, right? Because if you have, let's say, an AD group called payroll, right, and it consists of all the payroll people, instead of typing, I don't know, 25 names in here, right, you can easily add the AD group inside of a SharePoint group. All right. So for example, if I want to invite, payroll to this communication site, all right, I can easily do that. And essentially, the entire whoever is a member of this payroll AD group will be part of the SharePoint security group, and likewise the whole SharePoint site. What's interesting though is that you cannot embed AD group inside of the Microsoft 365 group. When you add people here, this has to be actual people, all right? Let me show it to you, all right? I'm trying to do the same thing. As you can see, I will get an error message, all right? Why? Because you have to specify people. You cannot specify ID groups. So it's kind of a flat, kind of architecture. And it does, I think, once again, make sense. It does make sense. So you will need, once again, to make some decisions about some of those ID groups you might have. And eventually, I think you will need to give the power, to the people and let them manage security on their own for their own, communication sites and team sites. The last advice I want to give you, and it has nothing to do with settings, but it has to do with training. Um, I think training is a huge aspect of any SharePoint implementation. And I think permissions is one of the strongest reasons and use cases on why you need to conduct training. Um, uh, Look, I mean, I described to you all those different tips and I showed you a few tricks. But there is a lot more, all right? There is a lot more in terms of permissions. It gets might get a little more complicated. There are, many different ways you can configure, permissions for your organization. And even what we covered in this particular tutorial in this video, it is overwhelming, right? You have all these different types of sites, you have all these different settings, and all these different site sharing settings, and different ways to share documents and files. There is a lot to digest. And what I always recommend is that make sure to to conduct some training if you are implementing SharePoint. From user adoption standpoint, I think training is definitely it will provide your biggest return on investment. Now, obviously, there are plenty of resources on the web where you can find, training options. I just wanted to mention that I also do provide training. I'm pretty big about training. So if you're looking for any training for your organization, first of all, I do offer a variety of SharePoint services from Auli Consulting. If you have a few, questions to ask me, kind of an informal consulting session, I can also help you build an internet portal. So I do provide that service. But if you or your organization is looking for training, I have plenty of options as well. I offer on-demand training, and this is where you can enroll or have your employees enroll in the variety of training, courses that I offer, and this is available on demand. And by the way, if you have, many employees, I do offer volume licenses, volume licensing, and significant discounts if you have several, many employees. But at the same time, I also offer live training, and usually that is the most popular option. Why? Because first of all, I always cover kind of the latest and greatest features. And I also, this is also an opportunity for me to ask me questions. So feel free to check out those resources on my website. I offer a number of different courses for different roles, different groups of users, and you can study the curriculum and the topics I cover right on my website. But again, the biggest benefit of the live training sessions is the fact that not only we cover latest and greatest features, but also the fact that users, attendees can ask me questions that I answer right away during those sessions. And of course, all the training sessions are recorded, and you will get you will receive the video at the end with the recording. So that's all I wanted to mention on this particular tutorial. Hopefully you found it informative. Like I said, I do have a pretty detailed article, blog post on the topic, and you can find it available right on my blog. Here it is. That's what it's called. You can actually search for it right on my blog. But I will also make sure to include that in the description under this video, so you can access that link as well. But for now, I wanted to thank you for watching this video. As always, happy to see you on my blog, SharePointMaven.com, as well as my YouTube channel. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day. Goodbye.